Hi friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for tuning into my video, and while you're at it, please don't forget to like, to comment, to subscribe, and to hit that notification bell so that you get notified whenever I post a video. So before I begin what I'm about to talk about, I just want to put out a disclaimer and say that whatever it is that I'm about to share, it is just my humble opinion, and I'm in no way trying to impose anything on anyone. I am just sharing according to my own personal experience, right? So as most of us know that next weekend is a big one for the Christian community. It is the celebration of the Easter weekend. We get to honor that day in remembrance of what Christ did for us on the cross when he died for our sins, and so on and so forth, right? So I'm not going to dive into that, but the reason why I started my video talking about that is because thinking about that weekend got me reflecting on how we used to celebrate it in my family when I was growing up, because my family was not necessarily a Christian family, so we didn't honor that day in a Christian traditional way, but we had our own way of honoring that day. So when I was looking back, I remember that day was about going to the gravesite and cleaning the gravesite and coming back, gather as a family and have lunch. So what would happen is that the male family members would go to the gravesite, the cemetery, and clean up the bushes around that surrounded the tombstones of our loved ones, and wipe up the tombstones so that their names and whatever that is written on the tombstones would be visible. And the female side of the family would remain back home preparing lunch, so that after the males are done with what they were doing in the gravesite, we would gather together as a family in loving memory of our loved ones. So that is why I decided that I'm going to wear this kind of hat in honor of the family member that recently passed on, who is my father's elder brother. He passed on last year January, and he used to love the berets, so I decided that because I am going to talk about honoring the people or the family members that have passed on in our families, why not honor my uncle and wear his favorite hat, right? So now that I'm a Christian, I started asking myself if I was still allowed to engage in those traditional practices. By traditional practices, I'm not saying the rituals like slaughtering, don't get me wrong. Traditional practices, what I mean is mainly what I just explained, how my family would celebrate that day, going to the gravesite. Am I still allowed to participate in those things? Am I still allowed to cook for the people who went to the gravesite? Am I still allowed to gather with my families in loving memory of the loved ones that have passed on? As much as I now know that the day is mainly about Christ, do I now neglect what the tradition that my family would honor? Is that now a sin? So those are the questions that I began to ask myself, right? And I began to ask myself, and also thinking about the fact that now that I'm a Christian, I have had talks or engagements with other fellow Christians, and I have seen how most people see visiting the grave sites as demonic, as ancestral worship. It's almost as if we are expected to just bury our loved ones and forget about them and never visit the tombstone or the grave site or the cemetery, whatever it is that you call it. It's almost as if that place become filthy, and I just feel I feel some kind of way about that. I feel like it's a wrong way to view things. Not everybody who goes to the gravesite is there to perform ancestral worship, but there are people who go there mainly to just remember their loved ones, and I don't see anything personally demonic about it, right? So another memory that came through while I was busy thinking about it is, as I have said, the only people that would go to those places were the males, right? And somehow the females wouldn't go. So I spent so many years not going to the graves of my loved ones. Even though by my loved ones, I don't necessarily mean my close, immediate family, but kids of my uncles, my grandparents, and so on and so forth, right? I never really took time to go and visit those sites. In fact, the only time that I would find myself in the cemetery was only when I go to bury a loved one, and that's just it. And my focus would only be on that particular funeral, on that particular person that we are burying, and I wouldn't even bother myself to remember that actually there are other family members that lie in the very same cemetery. So that was never really something that I thought about until my grandmother requested me and my husband to go and fix her brother's tombstone because it was no longer in good condition. So it was in 2020 around June when she asked us to go and just do a bit of tiling around his tombstone and put it and clean it up and so on and so forth, right? And at the time I didn't really understand the significance of doing that. For me, I just felt like it was just a waste of time and a waste of money. What's the point? I didn't get the point. But because she was very persistent, we decided that, okay, fine, we're gonna do it for her and please her heart, because she's the oldest existing member of the family. So you know how fragile they can be, and if you don't honor them, your heart will never be at ease, right? So I thought, let me just please my grandmother, let us go and do this thing. And it's her brother who passed on in 1996. So as you can imagine, we had to go through when we were approaching his graves or where his remains lie, right? We had to pass through a lot of graves of the people who passed on after that. And while we were walking through those graves and seeing all those names, different ages, different surnames, different names, different sizes and style and whatever, different conditions of the tombstones, some which saddened me were in very bad condition. You can just see that this grave has been abandoned. For a lack of a better word, this grave has been abandoned. No family member is coming here to take care of this grave or to clean it up or to check its condition, because honestly, when it rains, when there is a bad weather condition, the graves are also, the tombstone get affected as well. So that is when I saw why my grandmother was doing what she requested that we do, what she was saying we should do, because she knows that there was a possibility that it was maybe sinking and so on and so forth. But to be honest, my mother's uncle's grave was not in such a bad condition, just that they just wanted to modernize it a bit. But that one thing that saddened me is the fact that there are families that have actually abandoned their loved ones who lie in those graves, right? And I know that we cannot physically interact with them or not even spiritually interact with them, but I feel like the tombstone is the last remaining symbol of remembrance that you can still honor for your loved one, right? So I began to understand understand why my grandmother was doing what she was doing. And also I started thinking that maybe those people have been deceived to believe that once you bury your loved ones, that's it, you leave them as they are, you never go back to that place, because going back to that place, like I said, would mean that you are performing ancestral worship. Going back to that place would mean that you are engaging, or you are trying to please the dead, and I feel like that is not the point. That is not the point at all. So how I began to view it was that this tombstone are created for the generation to come, to know that this particular family member existed before me, and they are part of the chain that is connected to my existence. So imagine if we didn't have those symbol of remembrance. It means that you wouldn't know who came before you. And to be honest, I feel like we are so connected to those that came before me, so much in a way that we don't even realize it. We are very connected with those people, and it's when you go to those grave sites, you start to know their names, and once you know about them, you begin to ask those who exist, who were able to interact with those people who have passed on. That is, if you have never met or encountered that family member, you just know their grave. The existing family members are able to tell you stories about that person, and what would prompt you to question about them is when you go to those grave sites and you allow yourselves as families to move around and show the new generation that here lies this particular person, here lies this particular person. So seeing the conditions of those graves that were in bad condition made me realize why my grandmother wanted us to go and fix the tombstone of her brother, because she understood that since he had passed on a long time ago, over 20 years ago, obviously there was a possibility that the tombstone was no longer in good condition. So I began to really understand and acknowledge why she felt so pushed to do what she requested us to do. It was as if she had the energy to do it herself, she was going to do it. That is how much she had pushed us to do it. So that also got me thinking that, I should also encourage my viewers or people out there that you need to go to those places. You don't do it necessarily for yourself, because there's a possibility that you knew or you had an encounter with the person that you have buried. You have had your fair share of getting to know that person, but I feel like you do it for the next generation, because at the time when my grandmother's brother passed on, I was only 4 years old. But while I was fixing his grave, I got to see when he passed on. Actually no, I did know when he passed on, but I got to see his full name, and that prompted me to start to ask questions about the kind of person that he was, and so on and so forth. That brought some sort of interest in me to want to get to know him. And another time when I was sparked, or I was prompted to want to ask questions about my loved ones who have passed on, was after we had fixed my grandmother's brother's tombstone. When my father saw what we did, I feel like he was also prompted to take us on a journey, because he realized that his female kids have not necessarily visited the gravesite in a long time. So we went on a sort of like a mini tour of visiting the graves of my father's side of the family. He took us on a tour. It was my child, my sister and my brother and their partner and their kids, and my mother. Unfortunately, my husband and my little sister were not there. Next time. So we went on on to visit my father's parents, whom I have never met. They passed on before I was born, many years before I was born. So while I was there, don't take this the wrong way, I felt some sort of connection. TD Jakes loves to say that I come as one, but I stand as one, but I come as many. He acknowledges the fact that his existence, was contributed by the people who have passed on, his ancestors. So for the first time, I felt that kind of connection while I was there, while we were talking about them, while my father was talking about his parents, while I was reading through what was written on their tombstone, and I began to realize that actually these people are not demons. These people are not some evil spirits. Actually, these people are my family members, and they are chains that were joined with other family members, other people who have passed on in order for me to exist, and I began to think to myself that actually that is the reason why the book of Matthew chapter 1 was written the way that it was written. The introduction of the birth of Christ included or consisted of the lineage of the people that existed before him, him who, like the Bible explains it in such a way that we are able to understand the ancestors of Jesus, who came before Jesus until he was born. So I felt that kind of way when I was there, and it sparked an interest to know other family members that my grandmother comes from, my grandfather comes from, who are my relatives, and so on and so forth, because you might find that you even treat some people as less of your relatives because you don't even know the link between the two of you, the link between your family and their family, and you might find that you are loving somebody less because you don't understand the connection that you have in terms of your ancestors, because you share that lineage. You are related because of those people that have passed on. I just feel strongly that it's high time as Christian we stop demonizing the people that have passed on. I mean, they are our loved ones, and to be honest, if it is your mother that lies on that grave, you wouldn't call her a demon. She's still your mother. Even though she doesn't exist, you had a mother. You still have memories that you carry about your mother, So I felt strongly to come through here and share with you guys, particularly Christians who still believe that it's demonic to visit gravesite. I strongly believe that it's not demonic. I just feel like it's just a space where you sense a different type of energy. Like for example, if you visit a hospital and you see sick people, you are surrounded by people with different diseases, various diseases, some fatal, some that can be healed sooner, and so on and so forth. The reality of sickness and disease become very strong. You are surrounded by the energy of people who are sick. Similar also when you are surrounded by people with a lot of money, rich people, the energy there is about wealth. The energy there is about success. The energy there is about how they got their money, and so on and so forth. The energy there that you experience will not be poverty, but obviously you will experience the energy of wealth, having a lot of money. So similar when you are in the gravesite, the energy that I felt overwhelmed me was the reality of death. Death became such a reality for me while I was there, because while I was looking around me, I was not seeing people that were alive, but what I could see was tombstone of people who once existed in this world and have passed on. And that made me realize that, I need to live in such a way that will leave a footprint that, as Beyonce would say, I want to leave my my footprint in the sand of time. You know, I want to live a fulfilled life. You know, I want, when my kids come to visit my gravesite, to have good memories, or my loved ones, when they come to visit my gravesite, to be inspired, to remember me as somebody that went on for her dreams, somebody that loved, somebody that loved the Lord, somebody, you know, I just want them to have a positive mindset when they come to visit my gravesite, because that is the kind of energy that I want to that is the kind of energy that I want to give them, you know, when they come through. Because I don't want to be, when I have passed on, I don't want people to think that I have now become a demon and they cannot associate themselves with my gravesite, with my tombstone. I still want my children, my children's children, my children's children's, and everybody that come after me to still find interest to come and read my name, read my age, read whatever it is that people who will bury me would feel the need to write on my tombstone, you know. And I feel like that is something that we are missing, and we are neglecting, and we are robbing off the experience of going to visit our loved ones and remember them on a lighter note. Not remember them as somebody as demonic, you know, not remember them as people that once existed, that I joined with us in terms of ancestral lineage, you know. So yeah, man, this video is mainly to just shed light in the fact that we really do need to go and take care of the graves of those who have passed on before us, you know. Let us stop this thing of thinking that the people who have passed on are now demons, and this thing of believing that when people go and visit the grave sites, they are performing ancestral worship or rituals. Some of us just go there to remember our loved ones, to clean up the gravesite, to put flowers on top of those graves, and that is just it. So I hope that with this video you will be prompted to remember those who have passed on, and not just go and bury them and leave them as they are. Because honestly, the conditions of the graves that I saw that were in such a bad condition, it saddened me, and it made me realize that this should be a frequent thing. I should go and visit excuse the goats, I should go and visit the grave sites more often, and I will encourage my kids to do the same. So yeah, man, with that said, let me end this video here. Let us engage on the comment section. I would love to hear your views about this topic. I love you so much. Take care of your beautiful selves. Mwah.